The job you report to did not exist for most of human history. Not the person, the position. For thousands of years, work got done with no shift, no supervisor, and nobody checking whether you started on time. The boss is younger than the United States. And today, in a 2025 survey of 1,500 American employers, 78% said they run software that watches their staff work. By the end of this video, you will understand why the boss was invented by a man selling teapots, why a stopwatch caused a strike, a congressional hearing, and a federal ban, and why the device that was made illegal in 1915 is now in your pocket, switched on, because you switched it on. Start with how it worked before. In 18th century England, most manufacturing ran on the putting out system. A merchant dropped raw wool at your cottage. You spun it, wove it, and he collected the cloth and paid you by the piece. Nobody told you when to start. If you wanted to drink through Monday and work 18 hours on Friday, that was your business. Workers did it so reliably it had a name, Saint Monday. This worked until it didn't. The merchant paid for the cloth, but he could not see the work. Yarn went missing between the drop-off and the collection. Quality drifted. And when demand for fabric took off in the late 1700s, he had no way to make 100 cottages go faster at the same time. He had a business with no visibility into its own production. What he needed was not a better weaver. What he needed was to be able to see. In 1769, a potter named Josiah Wedgwood opened a factory in Staffordshire and called it Etruria. He built 42 houses next to it for the people who worked there. And he rigged a bell to a turret across the yard from his own house, which he rang himself at 5:45 every morning. Wedgwood is famous for the pottery. What he actually invented is more durable than the pottery. He took work out of the cottage, put it in one building, and attached a clock to it. Not because clay demanded it, because that was the only way to see who was working. 200 years later, two economists put a name on what Wedgwood had done. Armin Alkian and Harold Demsetz, 1972. In what became the most cited economics paper, the American Economic Review, published in 40 years. Their example: two people carrying a heavy sofa up a flight of stairs. The sofa arrives. That is the only output. If one of them eases off, you cannot tell which one, because there is no such thing as half a sofa. They called it the metering problem. When people produce as a team, individual contribution becomes invisible. Their solution is the job you report to. Appoint one person whose entire task is watching the others. Then the obvious problem: who watches the watcher? Their answer is the part most people never hear. You pay the monitor differently. Everyone else gets a wage. The monitor gets whatever is left over after the wages are paid. Economists call that the residual claimant. Everyone else calls it the owner. So you do not have a boss because somebody has to lead. You have a boss because somebody had to count, and counting only works if the counter keeps the difference. And notice what that means about the world before. A band of 30 hunter-gatherers needed no monitor, because 30 people who can all see each other are already monitoring each other. The moment production got big enough that nobody could see the whole thing, the job appeared. The boss is not a fact about human nature. It is a fact about how many people fit in one room, which sets up the second half. Once the job of the firm is to measure work, there is only one question left, and it has been the same question for 250 years. How precisely can you measure it? Enter Frederick Winslow Taylor. Taylor's idea was that every job could be broken into motions, every motion timed, and the fastest sequence made compulsory. Not how long the shift is, how many seconds it takes to pick up a hammer. He called it scientific management. The instrument was a stopwatch. In May 1911, Taylor sent a man named Dwight Merrick into the Watertown Arsenal in Massachusetts with a stopwatch. On the 11th of August, a molder refused to be timed and was fired for insubordination. Around 200 foundry workers walked out. The molders wrote to the commanding officer, and the striking sentence in that letter is not about pay or hours. They wrote that being timed was humiliating, from men who had always given the government their best. The strike lasted about a week. What came after did not. In 1912, Congress opened hearings titled "The Tailor and Other Systems of Shop Management," and arsenal workers testified. In 1915, the Army Appropriation Act banned stopwatch time studies and bonus payments in government arsenals outright. Read that again. The United States Congress made a measuring instrument illegal because of what it did to the people being measured. Taylor lost the arsenal and won the century. The ban covered government facilities, not private ones. Henry Ford built the moving assembly line on the same logic, and the stopwatch stayed in American industry for another 60 years. But it always had one limitation that protected people, and almost nobody noticed it at the time. Somebody had to physically carry the stopwatch into the room. It cost money, it needed a trained man, and everyone could see him standing there. That limitation is gone. In an Amazon warehouse, the instrument is the handheld scanner the worker already needs to do the job. Amazon told members of Congress how it works. Once 5 or more minutes pass with no scan, the system starts counting, and it adds that up across the shift. It is called time off task. Accumulate enough of it, and the system issues warnings, and those warnings can end in termination. Nobody carried a stopwatch into that building. The stopwatch is the tool you were handed at the start of the shift, and it scaled the way software scales. Gartner reported that the share of large employers tracking their workers doubled during the pandemic to around 60% and projected 70% by 2025. That 2025 survey of 1,500 American employers put online monitoring tools at 78%. Here is the number that matters most. In the same body of research, only about a fifth of employees believe they are being monitored online. The instrument did not just get cheaper, it got quiet. So compare the two moments honestly. In 1911, the measuring device had to be carried into the room by a man, and when the people being measured objected, Congress could ban the device, because the device was a thing you could point at. Today, the device is the job. It is issued to you. It runs whether anyone is watching or not, and for most people, it is a phone or a laptop they carry voluntarily into a house Congress cannot enter. The 1915 ban is still technically on the books. It was written for stopwatches. There is one explanation you will hear more than any other, and it does not survive contact with the timeline. That you have a boss because groups need leaders. Test it. Leadership did not become harder in 1769. What changed was that work moved into one building where it could be counted. Monitoring rises every single time measurement gets cheaper, and it has never once risen, because leadership got more difficult. The leadership story explains the title on the door. It does not explain the scanner in your hand. So this is what you now know. A merchant could not see inside 100 cottages, so a potter put the work in one building and rang a bell at 5:45. Two economists explained why. When people work as a team, individual effort is invisible, so somebody gets paid to watch and keeps the difference. Taylor made the watching precise enough to time a hammer. Watertown struck, Congress held hearings, and in 1915 the instrument was outlawed in federal arsenals. And 111 years later, the same instrument is in the hand of a warehouse worker, on the laptop of an accountant, in the pocket of almost everyone listening, running all day, and most of them do not think they are being watched. Which leaves you with two ways to read it. Either measurement is simply what an economy does, and the instrument getting better is progress, or a device that was once illegal became invisible, and invisible is how it won. You decide.